The morning sun rose over the quiet town, its golden rays spilling across the courthouse steps where reporters, bystanders, and curious townsfolk had gathered, whispering in anticipation of the most controversial trial their community had ever seen. At the center of the storm was not a politician, a corrupt businessman, or a scandalous celebrity. It was a tomb guard, a man sworn to an oath of silence, loyalty, and eternal vigilance. His arrest had shocked the nation, for the tomb guard was not an ordinary soldier. He was a symbol of discipline, sacrifice, and unwavering respect for the fallen. Yet here he was, shackled in heavy chains, being escorted by officers who themselves looked uneasy to be restraining a man of such honor. His name echoed among the crowd. Some spoke it with admiration, others with suspicion, but all with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. He had not yet spoken a word, not during his arrest, not during the endless hours of questioning, and not even when threatened with imprisonment. But today, in the silence of the courtroom, everyone waited for him to finally reveal why he stood accused of crimes so dark that even the press dared not fully print the details. As he entered the chamber, his eyes scanned the room, sharp yet calm, and for the first time, he raised his voice, not in anger, not in plea, but in a tone that carried centuries of secrets, a voice that promised to shake the foundations of truth itself. The judge, a stern man with gray hair and years of authority etched into the lines of his face, struck the gavel, commanding silence. Yet silence had already fallen, for the entire room was hypnotized by the tomb guard's very presence. The charges were read aloud: treason, conspiracy, and withholding classified information from the government. Gasps followed each word, for such accusations were unthinkable against someone who dedicated his life to honor. But the tomb guard did not flinch, his posture unbroken, his gaze fixed straight ahead. What none in the courtroom knew, however, was that his arrest had been orchestrated not because of disloyalty, but because of the truths he carried within him, truths that powerful men had long feared would escape the shadows. He had witnessed corruption at the highest level, betrayal hidden behind medals and flags, and a chain of command willing to sacrifice its own to protect dark secrets. The tomb guard had stood silently at ceremonies where leaders gave speeches about honor and sacrifice, all while concealing their own betrayal of that very oath. He had guarded the resting place of heroes, but he had also uncovered whispers of cover-ups, secret dealings, and orders that stained the legacy of the fallen. And now, with every word spoken in this trial, the walls of deception threatened to crumble. The tomb guard finally shifted, his chains rattling, as he prepared to reveal a truth that no one in the room was ready to hear. The defense attorney rose, his voice trembling with both fear and determination. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, he began, what you are about to hear is not merely a defense, but a confession, not of crime, but of truth. This man you see before you, this tomb guard, carries secrets not for his own protection, but for the protection of a nation that has forgotten what it means to be loyal to its own heroes. Murmurs spread across the room, but the guard raised his hand, silencing everyone without a single word. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, as if he had rehearsed every syllable in the silence of midnight watches. I am not on trial because I betrayed my country, he declared, his eyes piercing through the ranks of military officers seated in the gallery. I am on trial because I refused to betray the fallen. I swore an oath not just to stand watch over their tomb, but to guard their legacy. And what I discovered was a truth so dangerous, so damning, that those who claim to serve justice would rather silence me than face it. His words cut through the chamber like steel, sending a ripple of shock that silenced even the clacking of the court stenographer's keys. The guard's story was only beginning, yet already the courtroom trembled with the weight of what was to come. The prosecution, clearly rattled, scrambled to reassert control. This is irrelevant, the lead prosecutor barked. The guard is attempting to distract from the charges. He is no martyr, he is a criminal. But the audience was no longer convinced. For years, they had seen scandals sweep through their government, always dismissed, always silenced, always buried under paperwork and propaganda. And here stood a man who had risked his freedom to break the silence. The guard's voice deepened, resonating like a drumbeat of history itself. He began recounting what he had seen during his midnight watch, meetings held in secrecy beneath the very grounds of the tomb, documents exchanged under the cover of darkness, and symbols carved into stone that linked the highest offices of power to clandestine groups bent on rewriting the nation's past. He spoke of fellow guards who had gone missing, their disappearances brushed aside as transfers or personal matters, but whose families had never received explanations. Every revelation was like a dagger thrown into the air, landing squarely in the heart of the establishment. The judge tried to maintain order, banging the gavel again and again, but the tomb guard's voice could not be drowned out. It was as though centuries of unspoken history demanded to be heard, and the courtroom became less a chamber of law and more a theater of truth. By now, the atmosphere in the courtroom was suffocating, charged with tension so thick it seemed the very walls might crack. The guard paused, his eyes scanning the faces of those who sat before him, the judge, the prosecutors, the officers, the reporters. Some avoided his gaze, others stared in fear, and a few looked as though they were silently pleading for him to stop before it was too late. But he did not stop. Instead, he leaned forward, his chains clinking softly, and delivered words that froze every heart in the room. The truth is not mine alone. It is written in the stones, whispered in the halls of history, and guarded by every soul that rests beneath the tomb. You may silence me, but you cannot silence them. And if this nation truly seeks justice, then it must confront the corruption buried at its very core. His declaration was not loud, yet it thundered in every ear, leaving an echo that no one could erase. The court, for all its power, had become powerless in the face of truth. And though the trial was far from over, everyone knew the world beyond those walls would never be the same again. What began as an arrest had become a revelation, and the tomb guard had transformed from a prisoner into the voice of the voiceless.